The medical chamber was silent, the kind of silence that felt heavy, almost alive. Soft blue lights glowed around the room, touching the edges of the bed where Ethan sat completely still. Bandages wrapped his throat, glowing faintly with healing energy. His eyes were open, calm, yet tired, staring at the floor as if searching for something he had lost. And he had his voice. Ethan could hear footsteps outside the chamber, whispers of doctors, the soft beeps of machines. But inside him, the world felt empty. Silent. Final dot. He had made a choice no one understood. The door slid open with a slow hiss. A doctor stepped inside, holding a tablet. He looked at Ethan with a mix of respect and sadness. "You understand what you have done, right?" the doctor asked softly. Ethan blinked once. It was the only answer he could give. "You will never speak again," the doctor continued. "Your vocal energy is gone. She has it now." Ethan lowered his eyes, not out of regret, but out of acceptance. The doctor watched him for a moment, then left quietly, knowing Ethan did not need more words. Words were something he no longer owned. The room fell silent again. But this time, the silence felt deeper. Hours earlier, everything had been different. Ethan had been exploring the ruins of an abandoned research ship drifting in empty space. While scanning the broken corridors, he heard something, a soft breathing sound, almost too weak to notice. When he followed it, he found a small girl curled up under a collapsed metal beam. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes silver, glowing faintly with fear. She looked no older than 10 in human years. Her small hands were covered in dust, and her lips trembled as if she wanted to speak, but no sound came out. Ethan gently lifted the beam and carried her out. She clung to him with surprising strength, shaking with every breath at the station's medical lab. The doctors examined her. "She belongs to the Varan species," one of them explained. "They speak using a special energy. Without it—" The doctor hesitated. "She can never speak. Not a single word." The girl sat on the bed, knees pulled to her chest, eyes lowered. Ethan tried speaking to her, but she only stared, her face blank, dead, as if hope had already left her long ago. One doctor whispered, thinking Ethan could not hear. "She must have seen her entire colony fall. She is probably the last one left." When she heard that, the girl's eyes filled with tears, but no sound came out. Her silent crying was more painful than any scream. Ethan knelt beside her. He reached out his hand slowly. After a long moment, she placed her small, trembling hand into his. Something passed between them, then fear, loneliness, and a strange connection neither understood. Later, the lead scientist approached Ethan privately. "There is one way to restore her voice," he said. "But it requires a donor. A vocal energy transfer. A human could survive it." "Barely?" Ethan asked. "What happens to the donor?" The scientist looked away. "They lose their voice forever. They will never speak again." No one in the station volunteered. Why would they? A lifetime of silence for a child no one knew. But Ethan looked at the girl sitting alone in the corner, hugging herself, staring at nothing. She reminded him of someone he had lost long ago, someone he could not save. He wrote one sentence on a digital pad and handed it to the doctor. "I volunteer." The doctor stared at him in shock. "Are you sure? You will lose everything you have ever known: your voice, your identity, your ability to speak." Ethan only wrote another sentence. "She has already lost more." And so the transfer began. Machines hummed. Lights flickered. Ethan felt burning energy rip through his throat. He gasped, but no sound came. His vision blurred. He wondered if this was the end, if he would ever wake again. Then everything went dark, and now he sat in silence. His voice gone forever, but deep inside him he felt no regret, because somewhere in another room, A little alien girl was breathing easily for the first time. Whether she would speak or not, whether the experiment had worked, no one knew yet. But Ethan waited, silent, patient, hopeful. The alien girl woke slowly, blinking against the soft lights of the recovery room. Her fingers twitched, her breathing shaky, her eyes confused as she tried to understand where she was. For a moment, she looked peaceful until memory returned. Her body stiffened and fear crawled across her face. But something was different now. Her throat felt warm, alive, like a part of her that had been empty since birth was suddenly filled with new energy. She touched her neck carefully, feeling the faint pulse under her skin. She tried to speak, her lips moved, but no sound came yet. Her voice needed time to wake. A nurse approached gently. "You're safe here," she whispered. "Rest. He saved you." The girl's eyes widened. He. She remembered the human, the quiet one with the kind eyes. The one who reached for her hand when she felt nothing but fear. She looked around the room, searching for him, but he was nowhere. The nurse hesitated, then said softly, "He cannot speak now." "He gave you his voice." The girl froze. Her breath hitched. Her hands shook violently. Her people had warned all young Varan children that humans were dangerous. Selfish, violent creatures who only cared about power. But the human she met on the ruined ship. He had lifted her without fear, protected her without question. And now he had given her a gift no member of her own species had ever offered. He had given her a voice she had been denied her entire life, a voice her own people believed she did not deserve. Meanwhile, Ethan watched her through the glass from the hallway. He wanted to enter, to show her he was here, but the doctors insisted she needed rest. Still, he stood there silently, hands in pockets, eyes soft with concern. She saw him. The moment their eyes met, something inside her chest tightened. Not fear, not confusion. Something else. Something new. For the first time in her life, she felt someone had chosen her, not rejected her. But then memories hit her again. Her homeworld. Her parents screaming without sound. Smoke and fire in the sky. Red-armored invaders tearing through their cities. Her people Varan, falling one by one, their voice energy drained. Stolen. She had escaped only because her mother hid her under a broken machine. She remembered her mother's last gesture, trembling hand telling her not to make a sound, even though she had never been able to anyway. She had survived. Because she was silent, she had lived. Because she was broken. Tears filled her eyes. Again, as she looked at Ethan, she didn't understand why he would give up something so precious for someone like her. The door opened at last, and Ethan stepped inside slowly. He couldn't speak, but he placed his hand over his chest, the same gesture he used when they first met. The gesture that meant, "I'm here." The girl looked at him, trembling. She pointed at his bandaged throat and shook her head violently, as if saying, "Why would you do this? Why for me?" Ethan smiled softly. He didn't need a voice to answer. He simply sat beside her, letting her feel his calm presence. Her breathing steadied. For the first time, she reached out and touched his hand willingly. The lead scientist entered soon after, clearing his throat. "There is something she needs to know," he said gently. He turned to the girl. "We analyzed your DNA. You carry the final record of your people's voice signature. You were your species' last hope." The girl's face paled. She looked down at her hands, small, fragile, shaking. She had always believed she was weak, useless. Now she learned she carried something that made her a target. The scientist continued. "Those who destroyed your colony, the Silence Raiders, are searching for you. They know you survived. They want the voice signature inside you." Ethan's expression hardened. The girl looked terrified. She tried to speak again. Her throat glowed faintly, but still no sound came. Her voice was building, forming, gathering energy. She pointed at the door, then at Ethan, then at herself. A simple question formed on her lips. Are we safe? The scientist shook his head. No. They are already close. Ethan stood immediately, placing himself between the girl and the door. A silent promise to protect her. She stared at him, shocked. No one had ever stood for her. No one had ever chosen her safety over their own. Her first sound, not a word. But a tiny, broken breath escaped her throat. Not fear, not sadness, but hope. The Silence Raiders were coming. And her voice, her new voice, was the very thing they wanted most. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. It was the silence he chose. The station's alarm lights pulsed faintly red when morning came, a warning that danger was creeping closer each hour. The Silence Raiders were out there, searching, hunting, closing in. Everyone on board felt the tension rising, but no one felt it more than Ethan and the alien girl. She sat on the medical bed, knees pulled to her chest, watching the doctors move in a hurry. Her silver eyes flickered between fear and confusion. She touched her throat again, feeling the warm energy inside. It felt powerful, but also unstable, as if it had not fully accepted her yet. Ethan stood across the room, silent as always, watching her with calm eyes. She felt safe when he looked at her, but she could see something else in his gaze: pain. He had lost something to give her this chance. She still didn't know how to thank him. The lead scientist entered, holding a datapad filled with glowing diagrams. "It is time to test her vocal system," he announced. "But this is dangerous. The transfer is not complete. Her body is still adapting to human vocal energy." The girl stiffened. Danger. Again, Ethan stepped closer, shaking his head firmly. He pointed to the diagrams, then to her, asking silently, "Is this safe?" The scientist sighed. "Safe. No, but necessary." He showed them a medical chart. On the screen, the girl's vocal system glowed bright red. "This energy is unstable. If we do not guide it correctly, it may collapse. And if that happens..." He hesitated. She could lose her voice forever. Again, the girl hugged herself, trembling. She couldn't bear the thought of silence returning. She had never spoken before, but now that she had a chance, she feared losing it more than anything. The scientist continued, "There's a procedure that can stabilize her voice. But it requires the donor Ethan to channel more of his energy." The room fell still. Ethan had already lost his voice once. The idea of giving more, of risking even the little physical strength he had left. It was too much for anyone else to even consider, but Ethan didn't hesitate. He nodded. The girl jumped up and shook her head violently, grabbing his hand with both of hers. Her eyes widened, pleading no. "Haven't you given enough?" Ethan smiled softly, then knelt to her height. He placed his hand gently over her throat, then over his silent chest. His meaning was simple. "I chose this. I'm not afraid." Tears formed in her eyes. She didn't understand why he cared. Why he would help someone who wasn't even human. Why he would risk his life for her. The scientist activated the preparation chamber. A ring of blue light rose from the floor. "Lie down here," he instructed. Ethan complied, silent and steady. The girl stood frozen, unable to move. She wanted to stop them, but she couldn't, not yet. She didn't have a voice to tell them. As the machine warmed up, energy streams crawled along the walls like lightning cracks. The scientist spoke loudly over the rising hum. "Ethan, once this begins, you cannot stop it. The energy flow will be intense." Ethan nodded once. The girl reached for him, but a nurse gently pulled her back. She let out a soft, broken sound. It wasn't a word, but it was the closest she had ever come. It was fear. The chamber sealed. The experiment began. A thin beam of energy connected Ethan's throat to the girl's. Ethan arched slightly, gripping the edges of the table. He did not cry out, he couldn't, but his face twisted with pain. The girl gasped as energy surged into her. Her skin glowed with a faint blue aura. She staggered, clutching her chest as her heart raced faster than ever before. Her voice was forming inside her, growing, shaping, awakening. But the process was too strong. She screamed silently. Her mouth open but no sound escaping. Ethan saw her fall to her knees and tried to lift himself, tried to reassure her, but he couldn't move. The machine held him tight, stabilized the flow. The scientist shouted, the energy spiked violently. The chamber lights flickered. Steam burst from the console. A siren blared. His levels are dropping too fast. The girl looked at Ethan through the glass, eyes full of terror. She pressed her hand against the barrier. Stop. Please stop. She pushed with all her strength and suddenly a sound escaped her. Not a word, not a sentence, but a small, soft cry. A real sound. Her voice had awakened. The machine reacted instantly, adjusting the energy flow. The scientist gasped. Her voice is stabilizing. Keep the connection steady. Ethan's chest rose and fell weakly, his strength fading, but he smiled. He had heard her voice even, if only for a second. That alone was worth every sacrifice. The girl crawled toward the chamber, tears streaming, whispering broken syllables she couldn't control yet. Her voice shook the air, trembling with life. And far outside the station, hidden ships detected that tiny voice. The silence? Raiders had found her. The lights across the station flickered as if the whole structure was breathing unevenly. The energy from the experiment still vibrated in the walls, leaving behind a strange hum that did not feel natural. Scientists rushed from console to console, their faces pale with fear. Ethan lay in the chamber, chest rising weakly, his strength draining like water from cracked glass. He could still see the girl on the other side of the barrier kneeling, trembling, her small hand pressed against the glass. Tears ran down her blue cheeks, glowing faintly under the emergency lights. The scientist looked at the readings with horror. His energy levels are crashing. If we don't disconnect him right now, another scientist interrupted, pointing at the screen. No, look. Her vocal system is stabilizing. If we stop now, the transfer collapses. She'll lose her voice again. The girl shook her head violently. She didn't care about her voice. She wanted Ethan alive. She crawled closer, whispering tiny broken sounds that she couldn't control yet. Her voice was soft, too soft, but each sound cut into Ethan's heart like light in darkness. He forced his hand upward a little, just enough for her to see it. It's okay. The machine glowed brighter as if answering his silent reassurance. Suddenly, the chamber shook violently. A thunderous boom echoed. Across the station, what was that? The nurse shouted. The lead scientist paled. They're here. The silence raiders just dropped out of warp. The room froze. The girl's eyes widened with terror. She clutched her throat and backed away from the chamber, shaking her head. Her lips formed one shaky syllable. No. It was small, weak, almost nothing, but it was the first real word she had ever spoken. Ethan's eyes widened. The tiny sound reached him through the glass, warm like fire, sharp like hope. For a moment, he forgot the pain. But the danger outside grew closer. The station trembled again as the enemy ships latched onto the outer docking rings. Metal screeched against metal. Red lights flooded every hallway. Activate defenses. Seal all doors. Protect the donor and the girl. Alarms screamed through the corridors, but the girl didn't move. She stared at Ethan, the one person who chose her when the galaxy had not. She placed her small hand on the glass and whispered her second word, broken but real. "Please." The machine beeped wildly. Her voice energy was rising, responding to her emotions. The glass between them vibrated. The scientist panicked. Her voice is resonating with the chamber. If she speaks again before he finished, another violent explosion rocked the station. The lights went out for 2 seconds, then returned in deep red emergency mode. Enemy footsteps echoed through the metal halls, heavy, coordinated, merciless. The Silence Raiders had arrived. Ethan struggled to lift himself as alarms blared. He pressed his palm flat against the barrier. His eyes said everything. "You're not alone. Run, live." But she shook her head. She would not leave him. Never again. The chamber locks hissed as power systems fluctuated. Sparks fell from the ceiling. The scientist smashed the emergency release button. Get him out before the chamber collapses. The door unsealed with a burst of steam. 2 guards ran in, lifting Ethan gently. He could barely hold his head up, but his eyes searched for the girl. She ran to him instantly. Small hands grabbed his arms, trying to support him even though her tiny body shook with fear. She whispered another word, a soft, trembling sound. "Stay." Ethan wanted nothing more than to answer, to tell her he wasn't leaving her, but he had no voice left. So he placed his hand on her head gently. He wasn't going anywhere. Not. Without her, the floor shook violently again. The giant doors, at the end of the hallway, buckled inward as the silence. Raiders cut through them with red plasma blades. Their armored shapes loomed behind the melting metal, their glowing visors hunting for one thing, her voice. The scientist grabbed the girl's shoulders. "You must go. Your voice signature is the only surviving variant code. If they take it, they gain power over entire systems." She shook her head again and pressed against Ethan, refusing to leave him. A guard shouted, "They're breaching." "Move!" The metal door exploded inward. The Silence Raiders stepped through tall, cold, deadly dot. The girl's eyes widened in terror, and then her throat glowed, bright blue. Alive, her fear triggered something deep inside her voice system. The air vibrated. The floor beneath her feet trembled as her voice energy surged toward the surface. She opened her mouth. A sound was coming. Not soft, not weak, a real voice. A powerful one. The Silence Raiders froze as the energy around the girl began to rise like a storm. Ethan squeezed her hand. The storm had begun. The air around the girl vibrated like a living thing. A soft blue mist rose from her skin, swirling gently at first, then growing stronger as her emotions intensified. Her throat glowed brighter, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. The Silence Raiders, cold, armored, and ruthless, took one step forward. That was all it took. Her entire body stiffened, her hands shaking violently as she stared at them with wide, terrified eyes. She remembered their armor, their weapons, their silent cruelty. She remembered the night they destroyed her home, the night she lost everything. Her breath hitched. A spark of light formed at her throat. Ethan tightened his grip on her hand. His touch grounded her, reminding her she wasn't alone anymore. The Raiders raised their weapons. "Take the girl." The command echoed through the hall. The girl's fear exploded. Her mouth opened, and a word finally broke free. A real word. Her first word, full of pain, fear, and desperate hope. "Stop." The sound wasn't loud. It wasn't sharp. It was pure. And it was powerful enough to shake the entire hallway. A wave of blue energy burst from her, expanding like a rippling shockwave. It hit the Silence Raiders first. Their armor flickered. Their visors cracked. Their weapons sparked uncontrollably. The force threw them backward, slamming them into the broken doors and metal walls. A few collapsed instantly. Others struggled to rise, stunned and confused. The girl gasped, her knees giving out from the effort. Her voice had done that. She couldn't believe it. Ethan caught her before she fell. Though his body was weak, he supported her with his arms, pulling her close as her breathing trembled. She stared up at him with tears in her glowing silver eyes. Her lips quivered. Another soft word slipped out, gentler now. Sorry. Ethan shook his head quickly. No, she had nothing to be sorry for. He brushed her cheek gently, wiping away her tears. Behind them, the scientists watched in awe. She activated her resonance ability, he whispered. Her voice is not just sound, it's energy. Living energy. More raiders pushed through the corridor entrance, stepping over the fallen ones. Their weapons hummed as they locked onto the girl. But now she wasn't the same silent child they once hunted. She gripped Ethan's arm and stepped forward on shaky legs. Her voice may be new, but she could feel the power inside it. It wasn't stable yet, but it was enough to protect him. She whispered a word only he heard, stay. Her throat glowed again, brighter, stronger. The raiders fired. Blue energy burst from her throat in response, not a word, just a raw, instinctive cry. A shield of vibrating sound formed in front of her, catching the incoming shots and scattering them like dust. The scientists ducked. Guards held their shields, but none of it was needed. The girl's voice protected everyone behind her. The raiders staggered in confusion. One shouted, her voice should not be that strong. But it was. Because it wasn't just alien power fueling her resonance. It was Ethan's sacrifice. His voice lived inside her, now every sound she made was a part of him. She could feel his strength guiding her. She could feel his courage holding her up. And she realized something. Her voice wasn't hers alone. It was their voice. Ethan squeezed her hand again, weak but steady. His eyes encouraged her. You can do this. She nodded slowly. When the next wave of raiders stepped forward, she stood tall, still small, still trembling, but no longer helpless. She opened her mouth. This time, her voice was clear. Go away. The hallway exploded with blue light. The raiders were thrown backward like leaves in a storm, crashing into each other and shouting in panic. She had spoken her third word, and the galaxy heard it. Ethan smiled faintly. He wanted to speak to say how proud he was, but he had no voice left. So instead, he rested his forehead gently against hers. She understood. The scientist whispered from behind them, trembling, if she can control this, she can defeat them all. But the girl wasn't thinking of power. She was thinking of one thing, protecting the human who gave everything for her. She looked up at Ethan and whispered one more word, soft, emotional, breaking quietly in her small voice, thanks. And for the first time in Ethan's silent world, he felt truly heard. If you want part 6, 700 words, just say, start with part 6, you said. Start with part 6, more unique 700 words, ChatGPT said. Here is part 6, 700 words. The escape and the gift of his voice, written in simple English, third-person style, full of emotion plus heroism plus suspense, and perfect for HFY storytelling. This part shows how her new voice becomes their shield and their hope. Smoke filled the hallway, curling around the walls like dark fingers reaching for the survivors. Sparks rained from the broken ceiling lights as the alarms wailed through the entire station. The Silence Raiders were regrouping, recovering from the shock of the girl's powerful voice blast. Every second counted now. Ethan struggled to keep his balance as the girl held his arm, guiding him. His body was weak to weak after the energy transfer. He refused to slow down. He kept moving for her. Always for her. Behind them, guards fired blindly down the corridor to buy time. The scientists shouted directions. South wing. Emergency hangars. If we reach a ship, we can escape. The girl nodded, gripping Ethan's hand tighter. She had only spoken 3 real words in her entire life, but all of them were tied to him. Because he had given her the one thing she treasured above anything, a voice. A real voice. A voice that came from sacrifice, not birth. She would protect it. She would protect him. As they ran, the station shook again. The sound of metal twisting filled the air. The raiders weren't just boarding, they were slicing through the outer hull with plasma saws, breaking the station apart piece by piece. A guard yelled, "They're cutting us off." "Move." The girl turned sharply, her silver eyes glowing with rising energy. She lifted her hand instinctively, as if telling the collapsing corridor to stop. Her throat pulsed with light. But she hesitated. She was scared. Her voice was strong. Yes, but it was still wild, uncontrolled, every time she used it. She feared hurting Ethan. She feared losing control and harming the one person. It never harmed her. Ethan noticed her hesitation. He placed his hand gently over hers. She met his eyes. His message was clear. Don't be afraid. Your voice won't hurt me. I trust you. Her breath steadied, her throat glowed brighter. She whispered softly, "Hold." The word floated through the air like a fragile piece of music. But its effect was anything but fragile. Blue waves rippled from her, flowing down the collapsing hallway. The vibrations struck the falling debris, freezing it mid-air for half a second, just long enough for the group to run through before it all crashed behind them. The scientist stared in disbelief. She can direct her resonance. She's learning faster than any Varan child ever recorded. The girl didn't care about records. She cared about survival. And Ethan, they reached the south wing, but the door was sealed shut. Red with emergency lockdown. A guard slammed his fist against the panel. Systems offline. We can't open it. The girl stepped forward again. Ethan touched her shoulder lightly, asking with his eyes, "Are you okay to try again?" She nodded, though fear trembled in her lips. She approached the sealed door. Her voice shook, but she spoke anyway. Open word came out soft, but it resonated through the metal like a hammer striking a bell. The door shuddered, groaned, and slowly slid open. The guards stared at her like she was a miracle to Ethan. She was more than that. She was hope. Inside the hangar, several small evacuation ships floated silently, engines warming. But before they could reach one, the far doors burst open in a storm of sparks. The Silence Raiders' Dottos, their leader, stepped forward, armored in deep red, voice cold as ice. "Varan child, your voice belongs to us." The girl stepped back, trembling. Ethan stepped in front of her. The raiders raised their weapons. The scientist whispered urgently, "Her voice is too unstable for a direct attack. If she releases a full blast, she might collapse, worse." The girl heard him. But she also heard Ethan's heartbeat, weak yet steady. Behind her, she stepped forward instead of back. Ethan grabbed her, arm worried, but she looked at him with quiet determination. This was her voice. The voice he gave her. She would use it for him. The raider leader took another step. "Submit." The girl took a deep breath. Her throat glowed brighter than ever before. Ethan squeezed her hand. She whispered her fourth real word, clear, strong, and filled with everything she felt. "No." The hangar exploded with light. A giant wave of sound blasted outward, shaking the entire station. Raiders flew in every direction like scraps of metal in a storm. Their weapons shattered. Their armor cracked. Their leader was thrown back into the wall so hard the metal bent around him. The girl collapsed to her knees from the effort. Breathing hard, Ethan caught her instantly. Holding her tightly as she trembled from exhaustion, she whispered weakly, her voice shaking, "I protect you." Ethan pulled her close, his silent voice saying everything, "And I protect you." The guards rushed forward. The blast opened a path. "Now is our chance, get on the ship." Ethan lifted the girl gently, and together they moved toward the transport. But as the ship's engines roared to life, something massive latched onto the station hall outside. A shadow larger than anything they had seen. The raiders weren't done. Not yet. The transport ship shook violently as something enormous latched onto the outer hull of the station. Metal screamed under pressure. Warning lights flashed every color: red for danger, blue for hull breach, white for evacuation. Everyone froze. Everyone except the girl. She felt it before anyone else, the cold, heavy vibration of the Silence Raiders' flagship. The same ship that destroyed her homeworld. The same ship she saw in her nightmares. The same ship that took her voice before she ever had one. Her fingers clutched Ethan's shirt tightly, burying her face into his chest. He wrapped his arms around her, silent yet steady. He didn't need a voice to tell her he was with her. His heartbeat said everything. The scientists shouted from the cockpit, "They're tearing the hangar open. If that flagship rips the station apart, we won't get off the ground." The girl lifted her head slowly. Her silver eyes glowed brighter now, not with fear, but with something deeper: resolve. She stepped away from Ethan, though her legs trembled terribly. She turned to face the hangar doors, shaking under the force of the enormous enemy ship. Every instinct inside her screamed to hide, to run, to disappear, but she didn't move. She couldn't not anymore. She had a voice now. A voice Ethan gave her. A voice she had promised to use for him. Ethan touched her shoulder, shaking his head. "Don't go." She placed her small hand over his, and for the first time she spoke willingly, bravely. "Trust me." Ethan froze. She turned away before his eyes could beg her to stop. The Raiders' flagship tore open the remaining hangar doors, revealing the monstrous vessel outside, black, jagged, glowing with stolen energy. Their leader stepped forward again, nearly twice the size of any human. "Last Varan child," he boomed. "Your voice belongs to us. Come, and your death will be painless." The girl stepped onto the edge of the cracked floor. Hair whipping in the cold vacuum, winds forcing through the broken hull. She stood so small, so fragile, yet the air around her began to ripple with blue light. Ethan took a step forward, wanting to pull her back, but the scientist grabbed him. "Stop. If you interrupt her resonance, the feedback could kill them both." Ethan froze helplessly. The Raider leader reached out a metal claw. "Your power was never yours." The girl lifted her chin. Her throat glowed soft at first, then brighter than any star outside the hangar window. She finally understood. Her voice was not a curse. Her silence was not weakness. Her life was not worthless. She closed her eyes gently, and she remembered Ethan's face. The first person who protected her. The first person who held her hand. The first person who gave her a voice. When she opened her eyes again, they were blazing silver. She whispered, "This voice is ours." Then she spoke the word that changed everything: enough. The universe heard it. A wave of pure sound burst from her, so bright, so powerful, so alive that even the stars outside seemed to tremble. The shock wave slammed into the flagship. Metal screamed, bent, then shattered. Armor cracked like thin ice under sunlight. The Raider leader flew backward into his ship as the wave tore through its engines. The vessel split in half, exploding in a chain of blue light that echoed across the entire orbital ring. Ethan shielded his eyes. The girl collapsed, forward falling, but he caught her before she hit the ground. Her small body trembled. Her breath was thin. But she was alive. She lifted her weak hand, placing it on Ethan's silent chest, and she whispered her final word of the battle soft. Warm, breaking with emotion, safe. Ethan pulled her close, holding her tightly as the station alarms finally quieted. The raiders were gone. The danger was over. Her voice had saved them all. Weeks later, in the Galactic Council Hall, the young girl stood on a wide platform, her silver eyes calm yet bright. Leaders from dozens of species watched her in silence. She spoke clearly, now her voice gentle, strong, and filled with truth. A human gave me a voice when I had none. A human chose to save me even when no one else would. Humanity is not weak. Humanity is not violent. Humanity is hope. Her words echoed across the chamber. Ethan watched from behind her, his throat still marked with healing scars. He could not speak, but he didn't need to. She spoke for them both. The council rose to their feet. The galaxy listened, and the girl, once silent, once hunted, became the voice of peace, a voice born from sacrifice, a voice born from love, a voice born from a human's choice, a voice that echoed across stars.